Hello everyone and welcome to this video. Now today I am going to be reviewing an album. I'm going to be looking at Squeeze's album from 1981, East Side Story. So what I'm going to do in this video is give a bit of quick background information about the album, then I will show you my vinyl copy of it, and then go over each of the album songs. There's 14 in total, go over each of them in detail. So yeah, this was the band's fourth studio album, released on the 15th of May in 1981. For this album, the band wanted to branch out musically. The original idea for this was to make a double LP and have each off the LPs 4 sides produced by a different producer, those being Elvis Costello, Dave Edmunds, Nick Lowe and Paul McCartney were all lined up to produce and work with Squeeze. However, it didn't quite turn out that way. In the end, Elvis Costello was the only one who really produced and worked with Squeeze. He produced 13 off the tracks on here, and Dave Edmunds done one of them. Another notable event in the band's history at this point was their keyboard player Jools Holland left the band the previous year to pursue a TV career, and he was replaced by already established singer and keyboardist a guy called Paul Carrack. Around the time the album came out as well, Squeeze were also being tipped for very big things. They were already quite a popular band in the UK, but now the two songwriters, Difford and Tilbrook, were being referred to as the next Lennon McCartney. So yeah, when this album came out, it didn't do all that great in the charts. It done alright. I mean, it reached number 19 in the UK albums charts and number 44 in the US. However, the critical reception to this was very strong. So I'm now just going to show you my vinyl copy of it here. There isn't much to the packaging. Honestly, it's just the front cover. The back cover there was sort of pictures of the band members and the track listing and that. And then the record, not sure if some copies came with a custom inner sleeve, but my one doesn't. And we're just on the standard A&M Records label there. Okay, so now I'm going to go over each of the album songs. I will score each song out of 10, and then those scores will be used to give us a overall percentage mark for the album. So it opens up strongly with a track called Quintessence, which I'm giving a 8 out of 10 to. This is, yeah, a strong, upbeat track to open the album. Lots of fun, musically, really, and quite a memorable song, as well, especially the chorus. It is a little bit repetitive, but it is very memorable, though. This was the Dave Edmunds produced song, and yeah, a pretty good track there to kick off the album. Next one is called Someone Else's Heart, which is a really nice song. Got this great sort of funky sort of bass sound on it. Sounds really great. Chris Difford takes the lead vocal for this song. And his vocals, they aren't quite as good as Glenn Tilbrook's vocals. He's got a very sort of low, slightly monotone voice and that. But it certainly suits this song, and it really gives it a little bit of character as well. So yeah, that's Someone Else's Heart, what I would give a 9 out of 10 to. Next one is probably one of the biggest songs on the album, maybe the most well-known track here. It's called Tempted, which I'm giving a full 10 out of 10 to, and this is actually sung by Paul Carrack. It is also interesting with this album that within the first 3 songs you get 3 different lead vocalists singing and that. But this one here, Tempted, though, is brilliantly sung by Paul Carrack. Really fits his very sort of soulful voice. The lyrics on this one written by Difford, sort of concern about sort of getting away from a place and that. He said that he wrote this one while he was in a taxi going to Heathrow Airport. It is slightly more sort of commercial sounding for Squeeze, which is ironic, as it actually wasn't a hit at the time it was originally released. I think it failed to crack the UK top 40, but in subsequent years it has become a true classic song. I think used in various films and TV advertisements and that. So yeah, Tempted, a really great tune there. She talks about office, she talks about dresses, she's seen what she Next one is also really fantastic. It is a track called Piccadilly, which like Glenn Tilbrook like takes the lead with this one. Lyrics on this sort of like concern like on like going out on like a date like with a girl and that, which were lyrics what like many sort of like young lads like could relate to like in like the late 70s, like early 80s, and that like Squeeze were writing about sort of issues and like sort of like things that would happen like in like normal people's lives. Like I think it's got a really fun sort of like musical like arrangement to it. A little bit like off its time, like stylistically. Reminds me like a little bit like of like the band like Madness, like their sort of like ska sort of sound and that. But it's a really great song, that Piccadilly. Yeah, a 9 out of 10. Next up is called There's No Tomorrow, which probably thinking about it would be my least favourite song like on the album, but it's still very good though, giving it a 7 out of 10. Slightly slower, slightly darker song this here, very much like a departure like stylistically like for Squeeze, but it's a little bit boring like as a song for me personally. Yeah, like it's got this sort of like piano motif sort of like running like the way like through the song, drags it down like a tad for me. But I am glad that they are trying new things, like experimenting like with like their musical style like on this song.
I wonder if they'll ever go to heaven.
The album though picks up quite well with the track Heaven, which I'm giving an 8 out of 10 to this one. This is one where like Chris Difford like also like takes the lead, but he like duets like with Tilbrook like during like the chorus. Like the voices always work like really like well together. That was also maybe like one of like the reasons for like their comparison like to Lennon McCartney, like the way like their vocals blend like so well. And yeah, the song like is very good. Like I like the sort of stop-start nature like off like I think like it is at the middle eighth of it, and that like it's sort of like interestingly structured, this track, I think. So yeah, that's Heaven, getting a 8 out of 10.
She likes recipe, a touch of Oriental.
Next up is another one of my favourites like on the album. It's called Woman's World, which I'm giving a full 10 out of 10 to this one. Yeah, I just love this track. For me, like it's got this kind of sort of soulful, sort of like almost Motown sort of like feel like to like the introduction. Like anyway, like just like in that sort of like the big sort of like guitar sound, and that like sounds like very airy, very sort of like textured, this track, I think. Just a lovely song, like with like very sort of like domestic, like down to earth like lyrics, like about like I think like it's basically just about like a woman like cooking like tea for like a family, but like sort of like wishing like off like bigger things and that. Like Difford like would always write like quite like observationally like about things he saw like and like remembered like growing up. And like this is a track where like I certainly sense that is like coming through like lyrically like with this song.
You've left my ring by the soap. Now is that love?
Okay, so now we flip over to side 2 of the album for the song Is That Love, which is for me a 10 out of 10, brilliant track, 100% sort of fun, pure like power pop. It's really great. One of my like absolute favourite like Squeeze songs, and like lyrically like it's about sort of like being in like a marriage, but sort of like going through sort of like run of the mill, and that like you've left my ring by the soap, now is that love. Like sort of like basic like subject matter, but like written like very well, like the way they have been like constructed, I think. And like Difford, like although like he like had like recently like married, like when like he wrote this song, like he says that it isn't like autobiographical. Like it is just for me like musically, like lyrically, it is everything what made Squeeze great. Right there, like Is That Love, a 10 out of 10.
She seemed a total killer.
Second track now on side 2 is called Fhole, which I'm giving a 8 out of 10. So this is a much more sort of like experimental song. They're sort of using these different sort of string like synthesizers, and that like certainly like I think like Jules Holland like leaving the band like along with like his boogie woogie piano, like it made it like a lot easier like for like the others like to like experiment and like try like new things. I think it's like the darker mood to this song here, like a lot more serious. Like I like it a lot really, but it is a tad too long. Like I mean, it's about 4 minutes and 52 seconds, which isn't all that long, but it does go on a little bit for me, this track personally, which is what kind of drags it down like a notch. But still, Fhole, a real great track there, very different for Squeeze. And then kind of like suddenly we are like plunged like into like this lovely sort of country ballad. Like it kind of like Fhole doesn't really like have like an ending, like it just sort of stops, and then like immediately we are into Labelled with Love, which is just a lovely song. It's got quite a soft like musical like arrangement to it, got like this very tasteful sort of country tinged like slide guitar to it. For me, one of the album's like absolute highlights, one of Squeeze's biggest hits, reached number 4 in the UK singles chart. But like strangely enough, like Tilbrook, like when like he like wrote this one, like he was a bit like ashamed to show it like to Elvis Costello, like he like didn't want it like on like the album like originally, but like I believe like Costello like persuaded him that it was a really great song, certainly worthy like of like inclusion. And then we have the song Someone Else's Bell, like not to be confused like with like the second song, like Someone Else's Heart. For me, this is one that kind of fades like into the background a little bit like with the album. Like it's a bit more rockier like after Labelled with Love, but like there's really like nothing else to it. Like it's got like a good sound, and like the chorus like I think like it is like pretty good like as well, but it is a little bit fillery for me. Someone Else's Bell. So yeah, that would get a 7 out of 10. By no means a bad song though.
Mumbo Jumbo words to say, are you coming out?
Next up is called Mumbo Jumbo, which I do quite like this one, like quite a bit. Like very sort of like Elvis Costello style to this song here. Like this is one where I can really like imagine being on one of his albums. Yeah, because like fun rockers sort of like for like the verses, like we've got this sort of Buddy Holly, sort of Peggy Sue style like drumming on it. Works really well, like I think like as a song, very catchy like melody, like as well like with like the chorus and that. So yeah, Mumbo Jumbo would get a 8 out of 10.
She finds it all quite rare that her meets.
And now the penultimate song is called Vanity Fair, which I absolutely love this song, giving it a full 10 out of 10. This is a real gorgeous, much quieter song, like coming after 2 slightly more like perky, like upbeat numbers. It's like very bare, like musically. You've just got like the string quartet. Like I think that like they were like inspired by like the Beatles' Eleanor Rigby with this song. And like once again, lyrically, like it just concerns like real people, sort of like day-to-day lives. Like in this one, like it's like a young woman like who's like working like in like a pub, but like shot like dreams like off like sort of bigger things, like sort of like becoming a star, and like sort of like Vanity Fair, like sort of like the sort of like going to parties like and like whatnot and that. Yeah, just like a real good song though, I think. The only thing I would say is it maybe comes a little bit too late like in like the album. This one would maybe seem like a bit stronger, like had it taken the place of say like There's No Tomorrow like on side 1, but like as like a standalone song, it is just gorgeous. So yeah, Vanity Fair would get a 10 out of 10 for me.
She feels messed around.
But now we are on to the closing number, which is called Messed Around, which is this very convincing sort of like rockabilly style song. Like it's got like sort of like it's got like these like echoey sort of vocals on it, like guitar like and bass, and like the drum sound like as well. Like it sounds like very sort of like 1950s, very retro sounding. They certainly like pulled this style off like very well like with this track here. Yeah, just a bit of fun like to end the album on, I think. Okay, so overall, this album would score 88%, which is a terrific score. Certainly for me, this is Squeeze's best album, and like I'm sure for most people, like they would regard this like as like their like artistic peak. Because like the last couple of albums, like they have been like really good, but they always had like a couple of like great perfect songs like on them, but then like a little bit like of like filler material. However, for me, like every song on here like has like a worthwhile place like on the album. Like even like some of like the lesser songs like There's No Tomorrow and like Someone Else's Bell, like say, like they are like unique songs and like still certainly like worth listening to. It really plays to like their strengths of like being like real craftsmen of like catchy pop songs with like lyrics very close like to like the South London upbringings. Yeah, like musically, like it's very sprawling, very diverse album. Like it almost feels like a double album, like their like original intention for this was. Just because there's so many, just because there's so many different sort of styles and like sounds like explored like on here. I think it is a really great album, really underrated 80s classic, I think, here. So yeah, that is the end of this album review. I would like to know what you think of this album down below in the comments. Like if like you've heard it, like if you haven't, like I would certainly like recommend listening to it because I think it is fantastic. And like also if like you have like any like requests for future album reviews, please do leave them down below. Also just a quick reminder that I have currently got my 500 subscribers contest running now. Like I think that there's a couple of like weeks like still to go, like until like it ends. And like I will also leave a link in the description like to that contest video. Like please do make an entry like if like you haven't done so like already. And yeah, I will see you all next time for the next album review. Goodbye.
People, the laundry